So please welcome to the Baobab stage, David Schindler.
I absolutely believe the world is flat. I'm totally convinced, and I'm going to prove it. I'm joking. I am interested in conspiracy theories like moon landing, 9/11, and I have a huge interest in them, but I don't believe in everything that's said. I think there's just a lot of unanswered questions around a lot of 9/11 moon landing. But for me, extraterrestrials and UFOs is not so much conspiracy. For me, it's more a fact that they are out there. In fact, can we have a show of hands? How many people in the audience believe that extraterrestrials have visited Earth? Oh my God, there's a lot of persuading to be done. I was hoping it's a minority, a majority. It's definitely a big minority. There we go. For the doubters out there, I've looked at so many videos over so many years, and for the doubters out there, for me, there is one video above all that I think hopefully will help you to believe that they are out there. They're out there. Clearly, it's So, as a ufologist for 40 years, I wasn't quite sure where to start, or it's such a huge topic and how to cover it. So I thought, where do I start? At the beginning, Big Bang. And I thought, no, that's probably not a good idea. I've seen a whole ton of videos on that. I still haven't got a Scooby-Doo what it's about. But I think we do need to consider whether there are extraterrestrials out there in the universe. And part of that is to try and comprehend the sheer size of the universe. And as we know, our solar system with the planets of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. Now, we normally assume there is no life within our solar system, but Europa is one of the largest of more than 90 moons in orbit around the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is the biggest planet. It's 11 times bigger than Earth. If you can imagine that for a moment, it's huge. And the Europa moon is one of the best places to look for alien life within our solar system, as the James Webb Telescope has discovered what they call an ocean world. Scientists now believe that underneath the icy crust of Europa, there is most likely liquid saltwater ocean containing twice as much water as Earth's oceans. And as we know, life on Earth began in the sea. So our galaxy, the Milky Way, has 100 billion planets. This is where we start. It starts all getting a bit hard to comprehend. And our Milky Way is 8 million times larger than the diameter of the solar system, 19 trillion miles. Now, scientists have determined as fact that the observable universe is 2 trillion galaxies. Gets hard to compute at this point. But crucially, each galaxy has a similar number of planets like ours. So bottom line, scientists believe a minimum 200 sextillion planets, that's 217 zeros on the end, exist. Let's just say it's a fuck of a lot of planets where life may exist. There's a lot of planets. And it's entirely possible there are multi-universes, who knows? And also there is the matter of infinity and beyond. There is no wall at the end of the universe. It goes on forever. So I thought I'd start off with some of my personal experiences to get some of the weird and wonderful out of the way. And then I'll talk about some more facts around this theme. In 2008, I bought my pal Al, as I like to call him. And when I bought Al back in 2008, the purpose was simply to make money for a laugh. It was just a bit of a joke, and I thought I'd take Al to a crop circle in Wiltshire, most of them in the county of Wiltshire, put Al in the crop circle at just the right distance, make it just a kind of bit blurry, but you can just see this alien in the crop circle, submit it to the Sun newspaper, and it's the world first. It's an alien in the crop circle. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. There were too many people there. I couldn't get the right angle. So what I did do was take Al on a holiday to Scotland, to the island of Arran. And just as a YouTube prank, I thought I'd put Al on the bank of the river and get my son and his friend to sort of discover it. And The footage was very grainy in those days. It was a long time ago, but this is what happened.
Kitty, you be all right?
It's very grainy. So that's my son and his friend. It does look better on the phone.
Oh my God, what is that?
You can see Al in the background there.
Oh my God!
As you'll see, it got 1.2 million views and 538 comments, and I did get the 10 grand that I was hoping to get from the Sun newspaper, not from the newspaper, but from the YouTube profits that I got over the months afterwards with 1 million hits. I have stood within multiple crop circles, and personally I'm convinced it's not drunken village people after the pub with a stick threshing down wheat. I've seen so many of these formations, I've stood in them. In my opinion, they are not man-made. Another phenomenon some of you may have heard of, and this gets a little bit weirder, is cattle and sheep mutilation. This is a fact. It's happened mainly in America in the 70s and 80s, but it has happened in a number of other countries. And there are literally thousands and thousands of sheep and cattle over time that have been mutilated for no scientific explanation can explain it. And basically most of the mutilation is around the reproductive system. There is a link coming. I was in North Wales on a family holiday many moons ago and came across a dead lamb I saw in the field. And I saw the eyes had been cut out very, very precisely. It kind of looked weird when I first looked down on this lamb carcass and got thinking, and clearly eyes being cut out, it could be a crow, it could be a bird. But then I looked down further at this carcass and I can only describe what really is the technical term, rectal coring. Basically, it had had its... I appeared in this UFO magazine, I reported it, I was really into the stuff at the time, and in essence, you'll see on this image that the sheep's had its reproductive system cut out, and that it looked as though it had been done by a laser. So I did say it was going to get a bit weird, and we'll go on to a bit more factual stuff in a moment. So apart from Al here, I've never really seen an ET or a UFO, and I definitely never want to be abducted. More of that later. But there is a world movement called the CE5 protocol. Again, you've probably not heard of, but it's linked to the close encounters of the fifth kind. And this happens all over the world. In essence, people get together in groups of 10 or 20 people, and through group meditations and kind of spiritual channeling, they make contact with ET craft. And it's not a question of an ET craft landing in the field next to them. It's much more that they are up in the sky, again, quite far off. It's not like these UFOs are coming down and hovering. They are far in the sky, but I've seen many, many sort of videos where people are having this experience. And as I've never seen a UFO, I thought I would join the CE5 group in Eastbourne. So I went to Eastbourne Beach quite recently. And believe it or not, these people are entirely rational, normal people, but they've clearly got an interest in the paranormal or the esoteric. I was there from 6 o'clock till midnight. A couple of people definitely saw sort of bluish flashes. I didn't really see anything. And unfortunately, I think with these, well, in my experience and with other CE5 protocol, they are often flashes in the sky. It's not like the UFOs come down and hover and make contact in that way. But the leader of the group was a very, very spiritual person. I don't think she was a bullshitter at all. She said she saw a beautiful blue and gold light ship that lit up the sky, she said on the Facebook group the next day. So I do believe some people have very different experiences with ETs than others. So let's get a bit more sciencey, and we can start with a theory Elon Musk seems very fond of, and that's called the Fermi paradox. This is the discrepancy between the lack of conclusive evidence of advanced extraterrestrials and the apparent high likelihood of its existence. In other words, NASA's SETI, which some of you may have heard of, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, postulate if life is so easy or prevalent in the universe, someone from somewhere must have come calling by now with absolute proof. When studying all of this over decades, the internet and social media have very much been the biggest friend and the biggest foe in terms of establishing proof, as clearly Photoshop and other video editing software makes even a clever 10-year-old can produce a UFO in his back garden. The term UFO is actually now pretty much defunct. It's more UAP, which again some of you may have heard of, unidentified aerial phenomena. And more recently it's actually become unidentified anomalous phenomena. I wouldn't like to say that after a few drinks. But they've gone away from the word aerial simply because there have been all sorts of sightings of UFOs going into the sea and coming out of the sea. I've seen a whole load of those. I believe, again, that's probably true. So I've literally seen hundreds, if not thousands, of videos over 30 years. And clearly in the earlier days, they are more powerful, as they're less likely to be doctored or being created by wackos or content creators in the field. And whilst many are simply anomalous lights of many different kinds, like satellites or weather balloons or even Chinese lanterns have been reported, even if 1% are actually extraterrestrial, for me that makes it hugely interesting. And as I said, let's put it, I've seen dozens of UFO footage that seem 100% real to me, but I cannot say for sure one of them is beyond all reasonable doubt, as you just don't know if they're being edited these days. Even if you take footage from 20 years ago, it could have been edited. Although I always think if there have been multiple sightings by multiple people on camera phones, that's a lot more compelling. And this was only last month in Hawaii. A whole number of people captured this at the same time. I think it was literally a dozen or more people got it from different angles. And there were these 4 blue UFOs. I mean, I've been studying this stuff for years and I've never seen it, this kind of formation before. So do governments have contacts with ETs? I do believe they have. Speaking in a 2005 interview, Jimmy Carter, the US president, was quoted, and this is a definite quote, "All of a sudden, one of the men next to me looked up and said, 'Look over in the west. There was a bright light in the sky. We all saw it. And then the light, it got closer and closer, and then it stopped. I don't know how far away, but it stopped instantly behind the pine trees. And all of a sudden, it changed to blue, and then it changed to white, and then to red. And we were trying to figure out what in the world it could be, and then it vanished into the distance.'" So this is a US president who's clearly seen a UFO. But the hard evidence that has not been covered up by government agencies is hard to find. Why did they cover it up? The primary reason, in my opinion, it is likely they have been involved with the reverse engineering of the technology recovered from UAPs. And they don't want it revealed to the public. And also, if there is technological advantage, then don't want that revealed in terms of defense in the emerging Cold War with China and Russia, etc. So it really all started in 1947 with a guy, Kenneth Arnold. He actually coined the term flying saucers. They've reproduced, he saw a number of these ET craft together, and he termed the phrase flying saucer. In the same year was Roswell, which I'm sure a lot of you must have heard of. And again, after studying this for many years, overall I do believe this genuinely was an ET craft that was recovered. Again, in my opinion, the timing of the first, and other people believe this in the field, that this first major ET presence in 1947 was very likely linked to the first 2 nuclear bombs in Japan in 1945. The strong scientific theory that such nuclear power, particularly if it was like a global nuclear war, would be felt throughout the galaxy. And who knows what effect that would have on extraterrestrials. Some of you may have heard of Nick Pope in the UK, and this is definitely a fact that he worked in the Ministry of Defence from 91 to 94 in a subsection department, more commonly known as the UFO desk, where his duties included investigating reports of UFO sightings. My perfect job. He, like many other military top brass that have been interviewed in the States, believe there have been recovered UAPs in America and probably other countries, but not in the UK for some reason. And they're still stored in the Area 51 desert area in the States, which I'm sure you've heard of, and more of that in a minute. Probably one of the most compelling, irrefutable evidence is the so-called Tic Tacs. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this. This was 100% admitted by the US Navy that the craft was not of this planet. This was advanced radar on the USS Princeton naval ship and detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in 1 second, and that the Navy's Departmental Office tracking UAPs had a total of 510 sightings since 2004. That's a matter of government record. So it's really hard to sum up briefly what this topic's all about, but for me, you have to analyse closely some key people in the field. I'll name a couple briefly in the 15 minutes I've got. We've got Bob Lazar. He's very well known in the UFO community. If you check him on Wikipedia, he is somewhat debunked. But again, I've seen a lot of interviews with this guy and lots of journalists interviewing him, documentaries, programs around. For me, he is the real deal. And in essence, he worked in Area 51 in the 1980s as a propulsion physicist. In other words, he was involved with testing the reverse engineering with one of the supposed 9 different captured ET craft. He said the interior of the spacecraft has no right angles. It's like a pewter color, as though it's been molded. So there's no screws or bolts or components, and weirdly, one very simple display screen. So it's very simplistic inside, considering they've traveled the distance that they have. He and others seem convinced that ETs control these craft through their minds. Kind of makes sense. If they're a million years ahead of us, why would you bother with a joystick? Lazar describes a reactor that uses an element called 115. It's used to, and it gets so impossible to understand, but basically it uses some sort of gravity field that allows it to bend gravity and therefore bend space and time around it, allowing it to travel at incredibly fast speeds from point A to B, infinitely faster than the speed of light. And in essence, it's obviously some kind of wormhole. And as these ETs may be literally millions of years ahead of us, it's not really surprising we just can't get our head around how all that sort of stuff works. You've no doubt heard of all the grey aliens like Al here, and actually it did appear in the Spielberg film, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Again, I've seen countless interviews with people who say they've been abducted by such grey alien species, and while some of them are definitely deep south, hillbilly, rednecks, and sorry if I sound a bit redneckist, but I've also seen so many interviews with totally normal people who all pretty much tell the same story. They've been abducted from their car or home. They obviously have taken up onto the spaceship. They go through a very painful, invasive surgery by the Greys, which are mainly on the reproductive system, but also around the head area. And obviously it's very painful, very traumatic. And most of the time, the ETs seem to be able to block the memory. Most of the people who can talk about this stuff have gone through regression hypnosis. So for me, it's likely there is some hybrid program going on between the Greys and the humans. It seems to be common acceptance that these 3-foot grey aliens like Al here are in essence AI machine-driven robots. They're not sentient beings. This book is by Whitley Strieber, again, very well known in the UFO circles, and I've read all his books and listened to hours and hours of podcasts with him and other abductees, all people or other people expert in this topic, and I assure you he's totally rational, totally calm, totally credible, and in my opinion, he's 100% not a nut job. And he's had many alien encounters, both on Earth and on board the ET craft. So these abductions, I'm sure, seem very far-fetched to most of you. I get that. But when you've seen literally dozens of these interviews with seemingly normal people, it does make you think there must be something behind it, particularly when their experiences seem to be so similar. So my final thought, more out there thought on this theme, and many abductees in this field believe there is in fact an intergalactic federation where the ETs from different planets gather together. If there are multiple ETs species in the infinite universe, it kind of makes sense. And that's one round table I would love to attend. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you may believe just a jot more that Al here is not the only one visiting us here on Earth. As a science TV presenter and he's actually quite a distinguished academic, Brian Cox said, if we walk outside now and look over Westminster and there's a spaceship hovering above, I would not be in the least bit surprised. So keep checking the South Dawns. They are out there.
No, brilliant. Can you stay for some questions? Sorry, David. That's okay.